I am a big supporter of town meeting. I'm also a big supporter of Libby Gibson and her office, because it isn't just Libby that runs things there. I've always maintained that I'd like to see them have more of a hand in what goes on, and the selectmen vote on things instead of, sitting there and I watch meetings sometimes and I listen to what they're talking about, and I'm saying this could be solved by just one good executive making the decisions. And I'm not talking about let's get a mayor or the chairman of the selectmen runs the thing. Hey, we didn't put Libby in there for nothing, okay? She works very hard. I think she's probably the least, she's underpaid, I think, for what she does. I mean, it looks good when you see the six figures, but the fact is she works about 90 hours a week. I would prefer, the selectmen are still micromanaging. They've always have, they always will. They don't get paid much, but they have a little bit of power, and they like to use that power. And I always say this, and I really believe it. How's that?
Good job.
I always believe that you're better off having somebody there who's just doing the job. There's no political influence. They don't get paid for what they do, the selectmen. I mean, for what they get paid, it might as well not be being paid. There's two ways around that. Either pay them more so that we can get people to do the job that... Right now, you have to be well off to do the job. I know you've got Tobias Glidden.
But particularly to be the chair.
But generally, you have to be retired or semi-retired, have lots of time, and have lots of money to be able to do this thing. Either pay these people enough money so we can get... I'd like to see a carpenter on there occasionally, or a plumber or whatever. They can't afford to do it. If you paid them a reasonable amount of money, that's one way to go. The other way is to maybe get some more people in Libby's office to help run the town, and like I said, the selectmen back off a little bit. I expect to see the selectmen walk in there on Wednesday night. I expect to see them vote on the warrant, the finances for the week before, or whatever it may be. I expect to see them vote on liquor licenses, that sort of thing. I think they do too much other things that they shouldn't be doing, and that's one thing I always hear. Well, it takes 40 hours a week to do the job. I don't think it does. I don't think it has to, but they make it that way, and I think that's the problem. Bernie Grossman used to tell me, he said, this is ridiculous. He said, I do this because I can do it. I can afford it. He said, but we need some people. He said, I think you can do it in 10 hours a week.
But even then, what was that, 15 years ago? That was it was a simpler time.
It was, but it also, how should I put it? You didn't have the staff that you had with Libby and her staff at that time either. You had 15 years ago. I can't remember if Libby was the
no, she was town administrator.
The town administrator at that point. I think she had a different title, but whatever it was. But even back before that, when we had, I forget what they call the guy, but we had one person that did all this stuff that was basically he was the executive secretary of the selectmen, is what it was called. And back then, we had selectmen who were normal people, is the way I put it. In other words, they were people that had jobs and, were in the trades, for example, some of them. And you know what? The executive secretary did most of this stuff. And one thing that I don't see now at selectmen's meetings, good example, it used to be when you looked at one of the meetings, the fire chief was always there, police chief was always there, DPW superintendent was always there, and there may be others. Today it would probably be health inspector, for example, would be one of the people. And they would, each week, give an assessment of what was going on in their office. And I think that would eliminate a lot of these things where it's like, oh, we just found out about this. Well, it won't be, if they have these people in there that are the heads of these departments giving a report every week, no one's going to be saying, oh, geez, that crept up on us, you know, because they should know each week where things are.
But isn't that in part a reflection of the person they work for, in the sense of sharing information and?
Well, I look at it this way: when you have somebody who works for you, and that would be the chief of police, the fire chief, whatever. Here's the way it goes. You look at what their performance is, and you say, you're doing great. Just keep with it. Or you're really doing fabulous, we'll give you a raise. Or we're not doing so well, you got to do better. And then there's the other one, hey, you're fired because you're not cutting it. So I think that's important to have, just to make it simple, you know.
You think that's happening?
It's like a job.
Is that happening now?
Well, I don't know. Is it? I see people I've worked for myself for so long. When I need to do something, I just do it. And sometimes it's wrong. So then you go back and you start out, you know where you made the mistake, and you go back and correct it. But what I see in town, and it's not just this town, it's Congress, it's everywhere, they have all these meetings and all these committees formed, and nothing ever gets done, or it takes forever to get it done. You know, that's why you need somebody like Libby or whoever it may be in that position to make decisions about a lot of these things. And Libby is doing more these days, I see. I think she's sort of, I think for a long time she was held back, because even though it takes a supermajority to get rid of Libby's job, or her in the job, she was always careful, I think, from what I could see, and to not sort of step over the line or step on toes.
And the other side of that, in fairness to her, was that there were some select men who were micromanagers and micromanaged her.
Yeah,
and
still are,
and maybe still are. Although I'm not inclined to think so much anymore.
I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. But you know what? Even just one of the selectmen bugging her about things, it's just one more thing she's got to deal with. And I still believe you've got an all-male board of selectmen, and you can't tell me that most men, unfortunately, these days still don't treat women somewhat as second-class citizens. That's one reason I like to see more women on the Board of Selectmen, because women politicians, I find, tend to be more, I'm not including Sarah in this one, but tend to be more rational. It's not, trying to think the term.
Less extreme?
Well, they're not. It's not a pissing contest, and that's the problem. A lot of it's like, if you ever dealt with lawyers, and believe me, I like lawyers. Okay, I have no problem. Everybody in my family is a lawyer, but the fact is, one guy makes out a contract, and the next lawyer has to put his little mark on it, and then the other one's got to come back, and it goes back and forth, and that's what we see, a lot of time in our selectmen. I think,
But let's talk about town meeting for a minute. I mean, the criticism of town meeting is it's become long and boring, and a place where the people who really have the important say are the special interests, who come in and pack the house for votes on particular things.
Well, to a point, and you know what? And I'm one of the special interests because I stick around at the end. And so there are things I vote on where I have immense power compared to what it should be. In other words, if I'm one of the last 50 people there, I'm voting for, how many people in town in that thing, whereas when there's 500 people in there, my vote is pretty minuscule. I think part of the problem with town meeting is that we need to do it in such a way that let's make the important articles, put them up at the end of the meeting so that people can't walk out, or if they walk out, they're giving up a lot of power. And The other thing that we have a problem with is we have too many zoning articles in there. I just think a lot of this stuff, how many times you have to rezone stuff to get it right, or to keep changing it. I just, and a lot of that is very political. It's like, I want to build a house here, but if I don't get it zoned this way, I can't build a house. Well, you know what? It's kind of like the Sconset thing. You knew what the land was when you bought it. Live with it. I mean, it's as simple as that. Instead, you go and plead mercy at town meeting, and a lot of people seem to get what they want.
That's sort of it's a different take on the special interest piece of it, because they go to a town official and the town official says no. The rules say no, and then they can backdoor it.
Yeah.
And come to town meeting and get their neighbors to come or friends to come and vote for it.
That's true, and if they get it at the right time, that's great. If there's 500 people in there, pretty hard to bring enough friends to do it. But very often they can sort of, work the sympathies of the meeting, and that works. But you know what? That's kind of, in a way, I kind of like that. I mean, the fact that there is some humanity involved in it, although a lot of times I don't agree with what's going on. There are times when we do get these things where people come up with something, you go, hey, that, I can relate to that, or I can sympathize with that. And I think we need a little of that humanity in our politics. I just, the biggest problem that I have with town meeting is the people that should be there aren't there, and those are the people that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Right. Because this is what really affects them. They have kids in school. They have a real stake in what goes on here, and yet they don't show up. And when I talk to these people, because I work with guys like this all the time. Well, I'm tired from work. I said, you're going to be a lot more tired if you have to pay taxes or on things that you didn't vote on, or whatever it may be. It doesn't be doesn't have to be taxes. It could be whatever it is that you don't like. You don't have a right to bitch if you're not there and participate. Simple as that. David Goodman, we'll see you at the special town meeting on November 4th. Yeah, can't wait. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good to see you. Okay.